His phone buzzed hard against the metal workbench, rattling a cold cup of Starbucks someone had abandoned near a stack of shop rags. Marcus flinched anyway, even though he told himself he was used to people watching him like he might mess up. Across the motor pool, a general in a crisp uniform stood with his arms folded, staring at a dead vehicle like it had personally insulted him. The engine had coughed, shuddered, and quit in front of a small crowd. Someone's laugh cut through the air, tight and sharp. The general's mouth tilted like he was amused. "Fix this engine," he said loud enough for the circle of people to hear, "and I'll marry you." The words hung there. Half joke, half challenge, all of it aimed right at Marcus. Marcus swallowed, wiped his hands on his pants, and stepped forward anyway. Fort Moore, Georgia didn't look like the movies. It wasn't all flags snapping in the wind and heroic music. Most days, it was heat that stuck to your skin, concrete that held on to the sun too long, and the steady grind of people trying to keep everything running. Marcus Reed had been in the Army 8 months. He still felt new in a way he couldn't explain. Not because he didn't know the rules, but because he didn't feel like anyone really knew him. He was 24, tall, and quiet in a way people often misunderstood. When he spoke, his voice was calm, even when his chest didn't feel calm at all. He'd learned early that if he said too much, people twisted it. If he said too little, they filled in the blanks with whatever they wanted. Before he enlisted, he worked at a small auto shop outside Columbus. It was the kind of place where the owner kept a coffee maker that tasted like burnt plastic and still insisted it was good enough. Marcus liked it anyway. Cars made sense. If something wasn't working, there was a reason. You didn't have to guess what a carburetor meant by its silence. You checked the basics. You listened. You paid attention. Life, outside the shop, hadn't been that simple. His mom's health started slipping the year he turned 22. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that got a big headline. Just a slow, stubborn decline that turned regular days into a series of appointments, missed work hours, and bills that arrived like they were angry. Some nights Marcus lay awake on a cheap mattress in his old apartment and listened to the upstairs neighbor's TV through the ceiling. He'd stare at his phone, thumb hovering over his bank app, then over his mom's last text. "I'm okay, baby. Don't worry." He worried anyway. The Army wasn't a rescue story. Marcus didn't join because he thought it would fix everything. He joined because he needed a stable paycheck, health insurance he could count on, and a path that didn't feel like sinking sand. He told himself he was choosing something solid. But stability came with its own kind of loneliness. In the barracks, he learned how to be present without being open. People talked about where they were from, who they missed, what they were planning when they got out. Marcus listened, nodded, gave short answers when asked. He wasn't hiding a secret. He just didn't want to be the guy everyone felt sorry for. At night, when he finally had a minute alone, he'd call his mom. Sometimes she answered and sounded strong. Sometimes she sounded tired in a way that made Marcus press his fingers hard into his forehead so he wouldn't say the wrong thing. "How's the base food?" she asked one evening. "It's food," Marcus said, trying to sound light. "I'm proud of you," she said, and he heard the pause after it. The quiet where a parent wanted to say more but didn't want to scare their kid. "Stop," Marcus muttered, half smiling, half hurting. "What?" she teased. "I can't be proud." "You can," he said, softer. "Just take it easy, okay?" He ended those calls with a tight feeling in his throat. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was pressure. Like he was carrying something heavy and pretending it wasn't heavy so nobody would reach for it. At work, he tried to be invisible and excellent at the same time. He was assigned to maintenance, mostly vehicles and equipment that needed routine checks. Oil, fluids, filters, wear and tear. It wasn't glamorous. But he liked the quiet logic of it. He liked that he could take a problem apart, piece by piece, until it stopped being a mystery. Still, he could feel eyes on him sometimes. Not always mean. Not always kind. Just measuring. He had one sergeant who spoke to him like Marcus was a question mark. "You know what you're doing, Reed?" he'd ask, even after Marcus had done the task right 3 times. "Yes, Sergeant," Marcus would say, because arguing didn't change anything. And then there were moments like today. The general's visit had turned the motor pool into a stage. People stood straighter, talked faster, tried to look busy. The air felt different when high rank showed up. Even the jokes got sharper, like everyone was trying to prove they belonged. The vehicle that wouldn't start sat there like an ugly truth. It had picked the worst time to fail. The general had been walking by, someone turned the key, and the engine answered with a weak sputter and a dead stop. Then that line, "Fix this engine, and I'll marry you." The crowd reacted like Marcus expected. A few chuckles. A few smirks. Someone muttered, "Good luck," in a tone that didn't sound like luck. Marcus didn't laugh. Not because he couldn't take a joke, but because he knew what it meant when people used jokes to test you. It meant they were watching for you to crack. He walked up to the vehicle, put one hand on the hood, and felt the leftover warmth. His mind went into a quiet focus, the way it always did when something needed fixing. He heard the world, but it got far away. "Give me a minute," Marcus said, not to anyone specific. He popped the hood. No drama. No speech. Just work. He checked the obvious first. Battery connections. Corrosion. A strap that looked slightly off. He tugged it gently and felt it shift. He looked over his shoulder at the sergeant, then back at the cable. The ground strap was loose enough to pass a quick glance, tight enough to fool someone rushing. Marcus grabbed a wrench, tightened it down, then checked the fuse box like his hands were running on memory. Someone behind him sighed like they were bored. Marcus ignored it. He leaned closer, smelled fuel, listened for the faint click that told him the system was trying. He made one more adjustment, wiped his palm across his forehead, and nodded to the driver. "Try it now," he said. The key turned. The engine caught like it had been waiting for someone to stop treating it like a performance and start treating it like a machine. The sound filled the space, steady and real. For a second, nobody spoke. Marcus stepped back, heart pounding even though his face stayed calm. He kept his eyes on the hood latch like it was the most normal thing in the world. Then the general let out a short laugh, but it wasn't the same kind of laugh as before. It had something else in it. Surprise, maybe. Or respect he hadn't planned on giving. Marcus's phone buzzed again on the bench behind him. Another message. Another reminder that even a small win didn't erase everything waiting on him after the workday ended. The general took a step closer, looking at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. Marcus didn't know what the general was going to say next. He only knew his hands had stopped shaking, and in the quiet after the engine started, something inside him felt a little less invisible. The crowd around the motor pool broke apart the way crowds always did once the moment passed. People went back to pretending they hadn't been watching so closely. Boots scuffed concrete. A couple of phones slipped back into pockets. Someone joked about lunch like nothing important had happened. Marcus lowered the hood, latched it, and stood there for a second longer than necessary. His chest felt tight, not from fear now, but from the strange aftershock of being seen. "Reed." He turned. The general stood a few feet away, hands on his hips, studying him with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Not smiling. Not frowning. Just thinking. "Where'd you learn to work like that?" the general asked. Marcus cleared his throat. "Auto shop back home, sir. Before I enlisted." The general nodded once, like that answer fit into a slot in his head. "You didn't rush," he said. "Most people rush." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, "because that was safe." The general glanced at the sergeant. "Make sure this one stays where he's useful." Then he walked off, already absorbed into another conversation, another problem. The moment ended as quietly as it had started. Marcus exhaled and realized he'd been holding his breath. Later that afternoon, he sat on the edge of his bunk scrolling through his phone without really reading anything. His mom had sent a picture of a half-finished puzzle on her kitchen table. A corner piece was missing. Can't find this one anywhere, her message read. Marcus smiled, then felt that familiar pinch behind his ribs. He typed back, "It's probably under the table," and added a thumbs-up emoji like that could stand in for everything he didn't know how to say. A knock sounded on the metal frame by the door. "Read," a voice said. "You busy?" Marcus looked up. It was Staff Sergeant Miller, the same one who usually questioned him twice before trusting his work. Miller stood awkwardly, like he wasn't sure how to start this. "No, Sergeant," Marcus said, standing out of habit. Miller waved him back down. "Relax. Sit for a minute." That alone felt strange. Miller leaned against the locker across from him, arms crossed but not defensive. "General asked about you," he said. "Wanted your name." Marcus nodded, unsure what to do with that information. "You don't say much," Miller continued. "I used to think you were checked out." Marcus kept his eyes on the floor. He'd learned not to argue with impressions. "But," Miller said, shifting his weight, "I think you're just careful." Marcus looked up at him then. Miller wasn't smiling, but he wasn't sharp either. He looked human. Tired, maybe. "I try to do my job right," Marcus said. Miller nodded. "Yeah, I can see that now." The silence stretched. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it wasn't easy. Marcus felt the old instinct rise in him, the one that told him to retreat, to keep this moment from turning into something heavier. Miller cleared his throat. "We've got an older vehicle in storage that keeps stalling. If you've got time tomorrow, I'd like you to take a look." No pressure. No pressure felt like a new language. "I can do that," Marcus said. Miller hesitated, then added, "And read. Good work today." When the door closed behind him, Marcus sat there staring at the dent in his locker. It wasn't praise that shook him. It was the shift. The feeling that maybe his place here wasn't as fragile as he thought. The next morning, the bus ride across base felt longer than usual. Marcus sat near the back, earbuds in but no music playing. Outside the window, buildings slid past in muted colors. People climbed on and off, each carrying their own invisible weight. At one stop, an older woman stepped on, her arms full of grocery bags that looked heavier than they should be. The bus lurched forward, and one bag tipped, spilling oranges across the aisle. Before Marcus thought about it, he was on his feet. "Here," he said, crouching to gather them. "I've got it." The woman laughed softly, embarrassed but grateful. "These things have a mind of their own," she said. Marcus handed her the bag. Their fingers brushed, and she smiled at him like she'd known him longer than 10 seconds. "Thank you," she said. "Most folks pretend they don't see." He shrugged. "Didn't seem right." She took the seat across from him. "You military?" she asked, nodding at his uniform. "Yes, ma'am. My husband was," she said. "Mechanic. Fixed everything except the coffee maker." Marcus smiled, a real one this time. "Name's Linda," she added. "You look like you're thinking too hard." Marcus chuckled quietly. "I do that. Don't we all?" Linda said. "Just don't let it stop you from noticing when things go right." When she got off a few stops later, she waved at him like an old friend. Marcus sat back down, heart doing that strange thing again. Not heavy. Not light. Just open. Later, in the storage bay, he worked on the stalling vehicle with slow focus. He found a cracked hose, barely visible unless you knew where to look. He replaced it, tested the engine, listened. It ran smooth. As he cleaned up, his phone buzzed. A voicemail notification. His mom. He stepped outside to listen. "Hey, baby," her voice said. "I found the puzzle piece. It was under the table like you said. Guess you still know me pretty well. I love you." Marcus leaned against the wall, closed his eyes, and let the sun warm his face. He felt something shift, just a little. Not a miracle. Not a solution. Just a reminder that connection didn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it showed up quietly, in small moments, when you weren't guarding yourself so hard. And for the first time in a long while, Marcus didn't push that feeling away. The night Marcus realized he couldn't keep pretending everything was fine came without warning. It was close to midnight. The barracks were quiet in that half-awake way, where someone down the hall coughed and a door creaked like it was thinking about opening and then changed its mind. Marcus sat on his bunk with his boots still on, phone in his hand, staring at a message he'd read 3 times already. It was from his mom's neighbor. "Marcus, your mom didn't want to worry you, but she had a rough day. She's home now. Please call when you can." His chest tightened. Not panic. Something slower and heavier. The kind of fear that didn't shout. It just settled in. He stepped outside into the humid Georgia night. The air smelled like cut grass and pavement that hadn't cooled yet. Crickets filled the silence like they were trying to distract him. He called his mom. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, baby. You okay?" he asked too quickly. There was a pause. Just a fraction of a second. He heard it anyway. "I'm fine," she said. "Just tired." Marcus pressed his thumb into the side of his phone. "That's not what Linda said." Another pause. Longer this time. "I didn't want to make a big deal," his mom replied. "They kept me a few hours. That's all." "Kept you where?" he asked, already knowing. "The hospital." The word hit him harder than he expected. He leaned against the railing and stared at the dark outline of the parking lot. "You should have told me," he said. "I didn't want you distracted," she said gently. "You've worked hard to get where you are." Marcus swallowed. "I'm not somewhere important if I can't be there when you need me." She sighed. "You're doing your best. I know that." After they hung up, Marcus stayed outside. The phone felt heavier in his hand now, like it carried more than glass and metal. He thought about the engine earlier that week. How one loose connection had stopped everything. How easy it had been to miss. He wondered what loose connections he'd been ignoring in his own life. The next few days passed in a blur. He showed up on time, did his work, spoke when spoken to. On the surface, nothing changed. Inside, everything felt louder. He replayed conversations in his head. His mom telling him not to worry. Himself saying, "I'm good," to people who didn't really ask. He thought about how often he chose silence because it felt safer than explaining. One afternoon, while checking inventory, his hands froze mid-task. A simple form. Boxes checked. Numbers written down. He couldn't remember what he'd just counted. Read. He looked up. Sergeant Miller stood nearby, watching him carefully. "You all right?" Miller asked. "Yes, Sergeant," Marcus said automatically. Miller didn't move. That wasn't an answer. Marcus stared at the clipboard. The words felt stuck somewhere between his chest and his mouth. "I'm just tired," he said finally. Miller studied him for a long moment. "You don't make mistakes," he said. "Not like this." Something in Marcus cracked. Not loudly. Not in a way anyone else could see. But it was enough. "My mom's sick," Marcus said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just stayed focused, it would be fine. But I don't know how to do this from far away." The air between them shifted. Miller nodded slowly. "That's a hard thing," he said. "Trying to be 2 places at once." Marcus let out a shaky breath. "I don't want special treatment. I don't want to pretend anymore." "You don't have to," Miller said. "But you do have to talk. That's how systems work. That's how people work." That night, Marcus lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about how much energy he'd spent proving he didn't need help. How careful he'd been not to take up space. He realized the truth he'd been avoiding wasn't that life was unfair. It was that he didn't trust himself to ask for what he needed without losing respect. The next morning, He sat on a bench outside the motor pool before his shift started. His coffee went untouched, cooling in the early air. His phone rested beside him. He opened a new message to his mom and typed, deleted, typed again. "I'm scared," he finally wrote. "And I don't want to be brave about it anymore." She replied a few minutes later. "That's okay," she wrote. "You don't have to be." Marcus stared at the screen, eyes burning. He hadn't realized how badly he needed permission to feel what he was already feeling. For the first time, he admitted to himself that strength wasn't the problem. Isolation was. And once he named it, he couldn't unsee it. That was the breaking point. Not a failure. Not a collapse. Just a quiet, honest moment where Marcus stopped running from the truth and stood still long enough to feel it. Marcus didn't wake up the next morning feeling lighter. Nothing dramatic had shifted overnight. His mom was still sick. The bills still existed. The future still felt uncertain in ways he couldn't solve with a wrench or a checklist. But something was different. When he got dressed, he didn't rush. He moved with intention, like someone who had finally admitted what they were carrying and decided not to pretend it weighed nothing. At the motor pool, the air was cooler than usual. A thin fog hovered near the ground, softening the edges of the buildings. Marcus liked mornings like this. They felt honest. Nothing flashy. Just real. Sergeant Miller waved him over near the maintenance bay. "I talked to admin," Miller said, keeping his voice low. "There are options if you need emergency leave down the line. No promises. But options." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." "No speeches," Miller added. "Just keep doing what you do." Marcus almost smiled. Later that day, he video called his mom during his break. She looked tired, but she was sitting up, wrapped in her old gray sweater. The one she wore when she wanted to feel steady. "You look serious," she teased. "I am," Marcus said. "I should have told you sooner that I was struggling." She studied him through the screen. "I should have told you sooner that I was scared too." They sat with that truth between them. It didn't fix anything, but it made the silence kinder. "I'm proud of you," she said again, but this time it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like understanding. That afternoon, Marcus was assigned to help train a new recruit in basic maintenance. The kid was nervous, hands shaky, asking too many questions. Marcus recognized himself immediately. "Slow down," Marcus said gently. "The engine isn't going anywhere." The recruit laughed, relieved. "I don't want to mess up." "You will," Marcus said. "That's how you learn where to look next time." As they worked, Marcus noticed something he hadn't before. Teaching grounded him. Explaining things out loud made his own thoughts clearer. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore. He was sharing space. Near the end of the shift, the same general from days earlier walked through the bay again. He paused when he saw Marcus. "You," the general said. "Read right." "Yes, sir." The general nodded toward the running vehicle. "Still holding things together?" Marcus glanced at the engine, then back at him. "Doing my part." The general studied him for a moment, then gave a short nod. "That's usually enough." And then he walked on. No applause. No speeches. Just acknowledgement. That night, Marcus sat on his bunk and opened his bank app. The numbers were still tight. Nothing magical had changed. But he made a plan. Small steps. Real ones. He also wrote something else. A message he'd avoided sending for months. To an old coworker from the auto shop. "Hey," he typed. "If you ever need help, I'm still good with engines." The reply came back faster than he expected. "Funny you say that. We could use you when you're home." Marcus set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a hallway. Long, uncertain, but passable. Before sleep, he thought about the joke that started it all. Fix this engine, I'll marry you. A careless line meant to entertain a crowd. What Marcus understood now was simple. People would test you. Life would challenge you. Sometimes with jokes. Sometimes with silence. Sometimes with fear that didn't announce itself. The point wasn't proving yourself in one perfect moment. The point was showing up again the next day. And the next. Letting yourself be seen. Letting yourself ask. Letting yourself connect. Marcus turned off the light. Tomorrow, there would be another engine. Another problem. Another quiet chance to choose persistence over isolation. And that, he realized, was enough.